Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. So, I am going to jump right into our topic. I actually just have a short window of time before my next client, and so I wanted to kind of record this real quick because I don't have as much free time this week. So, jumping right into our topic, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about self esteem and self worth. So, from two aspects. One, in the sense of how our own self esteem and self worth affect how we feel about ourselves and how we behave and how we interact with just kind of our world. And then on the other hand, how the way we feel about ourselves affects how we treat other people and how that kind of comes across in the way that we treat people. So, when we talk about self-esteem, it really is just about how we feel about ourselves. Like, how do I, when I think of myself, how do I feel about myself? Do I like myself? Do I feel confident? Do I feel like I'm good at things? Do I feel like I'm happy with the way I look, the way I behave, the way I think people like me and the way people treat me? Like, do I feel good about myself? Self-worth just kind of goes along with that. Like, do I feel worthy as a person? Do I feel good about myself in relation to other people? Do I feel like I deserve happiness? I feel like I deserve good things in life. And the reason that this is such a big topic is that we all interact with our world depending on how we feel about ourselves. And, we talked about identity and we did a whole series on identity, but basically the way that we feel about ourselves and perceive ourselves impacts how we treat the world and how we treat ourselves. And so that's kind of one part of it. So let me introduce to you the other part that I'm thinking of, which is we all, I think, strive to feel good. The goal that is not maybe spoken, sometimes it's spoken and sometimes it's not, but generally speaking, we all aspire to feel good, to find inner happiness of some form and fulfillment. And sometimes we do that by making choices that are good for us, but some of the times, some people will find fulfillment and joy within themselves by taking joy from other people. So, you think of the people who are maybe likely to discourage you, or like if you tell them something good that's going on in your life, they might make a comment that seems like they're raining on your parade a little bit, so to speak, or just kind of diminishing the fun thing or the positive thing that you did in your life because that makes them feel better. If they can make your joy smaller, then they don't feel so upset that their joy is not big. And so if they kind of want to, that misery loves company thing, right? So if I'm not happy, but you are, maybe inadvertently or unintentionally, I'm going to say or do something that's going to take your joy away from you so that I feel like you're back on my level. So I'm not the only one that's feeling some unhappiness or some dissatisfaction. And so it's this just kind of this idea of I'm going to take value from you, or maybe I'm going to, even whether it's something that I do outwardly to you, I say something that's going to bring your feelings down, or maybe it's just the way that I think of you. Maybe I'm going to think less of you, or I'm going to be judgmental of you, or in my head I'm going to be really competitive towards you because that's going to take value from you and it's going to fill that gap that I might be feeling within myself. So that's how I think just everyone at some level does this. Some people really genuinely don't compare as much or don't feel this insecurity or this jealousy. But I think honestly, most people at some point feel that insecurity or that jealousy. And it's not necessarily because the other person is this bigger, better person. It's because we don't feel good within ourselves. And when we don't feel good within ourselves, we tend to be more, we take those things personally. When we see someone else doing really well or being successful or just achieving something that we have not managed to achieve or that we're insecure about, then we're going to focus on that and we're going to compare and we're going to see fault in someone else just because it makes us feel better about ourselves. And so this is really, really common. Last week I was talking to you about social media consumption and healthy versus unhealthy ways to be involved in social media. That's something that, I talked about then, is this comparison that we look at other people's lives and then we somehow feel less than in our own lives because there is this feeling of like, it's that comparison, that feeling that someone else is doing something that we're not able to do or achieving something that we're not achieving. So taking that back to self-esteem and self-worth and insecurities, it really is. The reason I'm bringing this to you is because I think that we are all responsible for our own feelings, right? We're responsible for how we interact. There are always going to be quote unquote bullies in the world, whether they're people that are very outwardly ugly in the way that they treat you and very rude and disrespectful, or if it's that more passive kind of underrated, just like smaller scale things that are said or done that just make you feel bad about yourself. Um, and at some point, I'm sure we have all experienced both parts of that or both personalities of that. The outward bullies that are directly mean and the people that are doing things maybe a little more subtly, but it still hurts. And so, as individuals, we are responsible for how we protect ourselves. We've talked about boundaries and setting limits with people that aren't good for us. But there's also this piece that's super important, which is the resilience, being able to strengthen yourself internally to not get your feelings hurt, to not take things personally. I've talked to you before about taking things personally. I think that was one of the earlier episodes that I did when I started the podcast. And this is something that I personally worked on tremendously because if you know me, you know I'm a very sensitive person. I get my feelings hurt easily. I'm not ashamed of that. It's just the way that it is. But I've also learned that there are ways to strengthen myself where I don't lose that aspect of my personality and my identity, because I will always be a sensitive person. I will always have a softer heart where things hurt my feelings easily. But I also have the ability to toughen up, right? And I've learned to toughen up quite a bit. There are things that still get me, and then I'll be like, why am I so sensitive about this? Why did that hurt my feelings? But for the most part, we all have to learn how to be a little resilient. And that is resilient towards outward influences and people that might be trying to hurt us. But a lot of the time, it's resilience even within ourselves. Like when we are feeling insecure about something, or there's something within ourselves that we just don't really like or feel unhappy with, we have to work on strengthening our own resilience within ourselves, where we are able to look at ourselves, face that in ourselves, and say, listen, I don't like being, looking at myself that way. It doesn't make me feel good. It's just the way that I do it. But like, at what point am I going to start to treat myself better and be more positive? I think we just sometimes wear our insecurities on our sleeve. Like just this morning, one of my therapists and my friends that works with me, first thing she said when she saw me, one of the first things was like, oh, you look so nice. And my thing was like, do you see all my gray hair? Because my hair is due. But she pointed it out. She's like, I just gave you a compliment and you immediately turned it into a negative of some sort. And that, she was absolutely right. And that's something that I have to work on, right? But it's this insecurity that we all carry, whatever that looks like, whether it's an insecurity you're thinking of in the moment that you don't maybe feel all the time, but you just feel sometimes, and it just happens to be, you happen to be feeling it when something goes on, when you see something or someone else doing something, and you just feel a little struggling with that, you're insecure by it, or if it's an insecurity you carry with you all day long, all the time. And, some of the insecurities that people carry all day long are, more things to do with appearance, whether it's weight or just, more body stuff, skin, if you have lots of blemishes, pimples, if whatever. Those things that are very visible by other people are the things that we tend to carry with us a little bit more strongly. And then you have the things that are maybe a little more invisible. They're not seen by others as much, but we carry them like a chip on our shoulder all day long, just kind of somehow feeling inferior to other people or feeling less than. And those insecurities play such a huge role in how we treat ourselves and how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about others. So going back to the example of, taking value from other people to feel better about ourselves, we all do that at some point unintentionally. We've talked before about judgment. I try to constantly work on not being a judgmental person, and I think that that's important for all of us. But at the end of the day, we're all judgmental. I own that. There are things that I'm very strongly opinionated about, and I own that I'm pretty judgmental about that. I try to never treat people in a way that communicates a judgment because I would never want that done to me. But at the end of the day, we all do it, and we all have to kind of have that moment within ourselves where we feel regret or guilt for thinking a certain way or feeling a certain way. I had this happen not long ago where I found myself judging someone for the way that they were kind of living out a certain aspect of their life. And I felt, I expressed that to someone close to me and it was fine. But then I felt awful about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I just totally judged that person. Yeah, and they would never know. I would never behave in a way that would make them feel like I was judging them. But within myself and in this, conversation I was having with the person close to me, it just felt so mean. I felt so bad, and I wasn't saying anything awful, but it was just the idea that like, oh my gosh, I am so critical of this person that honestly, I don't know enough about them to have this opinion. And regardless of what the details are, we should decide within ourselves, are we comfortable taking value from other people, whether they know we're doing it or not? Is that what we really need to make ourselves feel good? Do we really need to look at other people and find some kind of flaw or fault in them to feel better about ourselves? And the answer is always going to be no. Whether we choose to do it or not, that's different from is it right or wrong or should we? Sometimes it feels good to just find flaw in someone else because it makes us feel better. But at the end of the day, we need to check ourselves. We need to be very aware of the fact that this isn't healthy for us. And even if that other person never knows and we're not causing harm, it's a yucky feeling to have. I don't want you to be the kind of person that carries this burden of being critical of someone else because it makes you feel better about yourself. It doesn't solve the problem. You're still going to feel bad about yourself whether you trash talk someone else's stuff or not. And so what's more important is figuring out what is that insecurity within yourself or that reason that you're judgmental towards this person, because it may be an insecurity or it may be just a strongly held belief about something that you're critical about the other person because they're not fitting in that belief system or that opinion about something that you have. So whatever that is, if you find yourself in that headspace or in that thought process of criticizing internally or being, taking value from someone else in your mind or in your conversations with people to feel better about something within yourself, call yourself out for that and say, okay, where's this coming from? Why am I doing this? What is it that I'm trying to feel better about? And whatever that thing is, try to really kind of sort through it and actually challenge it and be like, okay, well, I don't, if you discover what it is, then you get to ask yourself, is there a different way for me to deal with this thing that I'm feeling kind of opinionated about or insecure about? What do I need to do to make myself feel better or to create a separation between me and the way other people live their lives so that I don't have to feel like I'm walking around with this chip on my shoulder or with the need to find lesser value in someone else to make myself feel better. It's really just about self-awareness. It's about calling ourselves out. It's about making the decision to just try to be a better person for ourselves. And ultimately, by doing that, we are increasing self-esteem. We are improving self-worth because we're focusing on finding value within ourselves and finding self-esteem and self-worth, all the things, finding value within ourselves instead of taking it from someone else in order to feel good about ourselves. And the topic of self-esteem, I mean, you can go down all kinds of paths and rabbit holes with that and talk about it in so many ways. Everything we do in our life affects us somehow, affects how we feel about ourselves and other people somehow. It's just part of being social people, social beings, interacting with other people, whether it's direct interaction or hearing something on the news or on social media, like everything affects us, but it affects us in a way that we sometimes don't realize it affects us. when we consume information somehow, then we're filing it away somewhere in our minds. It is finding a final resting place somewhere in our minds. And that sometimes takes form of an opinion or a judgment or just a belief or a feeling or a thought, whatever. It's not always negative. Sometimes they're great. These are things that we do and we feel. Sometimes you do something that makes you feel so good about yourself, and so you file it away, and it just kind of embeds itself in your mind, and then that creates an effect some way in your life where it either helps you do something good, or it helps you do something bad, or it helps you feel a certain way. And so be mindful of the kind of the things that you're carrying around in your mind and your heart, on your soul. Like, how are you affected by the way that you interact, and how is your self-esteem impacted by the way you interact with the world and with other people? And if you find that you are searching for self-worth, self-value, be very mindful first of what the issue is, what you're searching for, and be mindful of where you're searching for it. Are you finding it in good places? Are you taking it from other people? Are you trying to better yourself, or are you trying to make excuses to feel better about yourself? Whatever it is, I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong as far as the details. I'm just going to say, figure out, like, give yourself that attention. Be mindful. I'm all about self-awareness. Like, if you're thinking or feeling a certain thing, do you know why? Like, where's it coming from? Understand yourself. Understand how you feel. When you have a body physical reaction to something, like maybe you have anxiety, or you feel stressed, your heart starts beating really fast, or you start feeling sweaty, like, what are you physically reacting to? Is it something based on an emotional situation or a feeling? Where is it coming from? And in this specific conversation, I'm talking about that self-esteem and self-worth. If you feel that less than feeling or some kind of insecurity, do you know where it's coming from? Do you understand what's causing it? And if so, how are you trying to resolve that? Are you just wallowing in the misery of feeling bad and just living in a state of constant unhappiness? Or are you trying to do something to fix it? And if you're trying to do something to fix it, are you doing things that are actually helpful? Or are they just temporary band-aids that aren't really going to resolve the issue deep down? So, when we think about spring cleaning, a lot of people are talking about getting ready for, seasons changing, cleaning out cabinets and stuff like this. Clean yourself out. Figure out what's going on within yourself. Figure out what's causing some of those insecurities. Make sure you're constantly sorting, getting rid of the stuff you don't need internally, getting rid of thoughts that don't serve you, and just cleaning them out and replacing them with something that's better for you, healthier, happier, all of that. So I'm going to wrap up here because I've got 3 minutes till my next session, and I got to get going. So I hope you all have a great week. I hope this helps you kind of find more understanding about yourself and your self-worth, and I will see you next time. All right, have a good day. Bye.